If you go bankrupt trying to feed your family at Whole Foods, they're guaranteed to have worse health outcomes than if you had just fed them a normal diet from the regular grocery store that you could afford.
Run your home and your dough like a biblical boss. Welcome to another episode of Abraham's Wallet. How are you doing today, Mark? How's your mustache?
It's thick. It's in need of a trim, to be honest.
Are your testosterone levels high? Have you had that checked recently?
I guess we're getting right into it. So, guys, hormone testing, total waste of your money. No, I haven't. I assume that my testosterone is fine because the deadlift is really returning to form these days.
Well, I'm thinking of I wasn't planning on saying this, hoping I'm not stepping on toes of anything we're about to say, but I always think of my doctor asking me. I'll ask him a question like that. Should I get my hormones tested or my whatever? And his answer is always, "Are you having problems?" Uh, no. I was just thinking maybe I should get the testosterone thing. I don't see why you would. All right. Have a great day.
We're gonna come back to this doctor of yours because I think about him once a week based on some of the things you've said to me about your conversations with your family doc. So
Nice.
I'm excited to bring him into the Abraham's Wallet universe.
Well, why not dive right in? What is the bee under your bonnet right now, Mark?
Well, Stephen, you may know this. You and I own a company together that does this, but I do a lot of financial planning.
Oh, okay. Financial planning.
It's what occupies my time. It's what my occupation is a
Yeah,
financial
makes sense.
planner.
It's like your vocation.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
it turns out that I have repeatedly, I don't know if you experienced this. We're talking about healthcare today, but have you gone for like a dental cleaning and you have a little maybe gum recession or something where there's a little spot where if they touch it, it just zings
Oh,
you and it makes you recoil?
yeah.
Yeah. The touching of a nerve,
Yes.
it's just I have that reaction from clients on the regular. I touch a nerve whenever I bring up the topics of health, I would say. The spending that families do on health, maybe that comes through the form of food spending, maybe it's supplements, maybe it's health care, but it is like the category that is the most uh, fraught for me to tiptoe into when I'm looking at a family's spending patterns and trying to figure out how I can help them create a plan that leads to success. So, over and over, I have thought, wouldn't it be helpful if we recorded what I think might end up being a few episodes on how to deploy your money or how not to deploy your money in order to have maximal impact on your family's physical capital? So, in this little series, I want to talk about how we spend on healthcare. I want to talk about how we spend on food. I want to talk about even how we spend on like physical activity and health and gym and kids and all that stuff.
Okay, this is great. Let me restate for my mind and for the listener. When you are when you are a financial planner, you're kind of bustling around their financial home. You're kind of opening up old pots. What's cooking under there? You're kind of looking in cabinets. And that's not because you're nosy, it's because you have to have a complete picture of everything happening on in their financial world to make a plan. And sometimes when you're rummaging around their financial home, your elbow bumps against a shelf and everyone's eyes get huge and they go, "No, not there." And you think, "Is there an idol under there? Why is this so precious that I can't touch this thing?" And it's very interesting when you get into people's financial world that everyone kind of thinks, "I'm not like those other people. It's all open before God. He can do whatever." But you kind of hit on some areas, and you're saying repeatedly you hit on things that have to do with physical capital, whether it's health or food or whatever. And people think this is something that even my financial advisor could not speak to. He cannot address this area because this is so personal and precious and special that it can't be touched by you. And let me rephrase something that, or contextualize something that you just said, which is for anybody that doesn't have this framework. I just went through this yesterday with a young man, talking through something that we call the five capitals. And the five capitals are everything in life, everything that you do, everything that you think, everything you spend your time on could be categorized in one of five capitals. The most important capital in your life is spiritual capital. Then underneath that is relational capital, your relationships around you. When you're laying in your deathbed, you're probably thinking mostly spiritual capital and relational capital. You go down, down, down the list, and at the bottom, the least valuable capital, because it's the easiest to acquire, and it's supposed to fuel the other capitals, is financial capital. There's so much that the Bible says about financial capital that we're supposed to learn important lessons. One of those lessons about financial capital is that you're supposed to use it to trade up. And you're saying there is a wise and a shrewd way to use financial capital to gain physical capital. That is the way that we treat our bodies and our surroundings. And there's a dumb way to measure the relationship between finances and physical capital.
Yeah. And like I said, there's so much here that I'm just going to start with the one topic that I think everybody at every budget level looks at me and kind of, they have these puppy eyes of, is what we spend on food okay, Mark, when they present their spending plan to me. And I think it's a place where there's a lot of variability and there's a lot of values that go into food spending. Um, but like you said, there's also these sort of sacred, well, we are the healthy people, and so don't you dare tell me not to do what I'm doing over here. So I get a lot of that. So I wanted to start before we dive into kind of what this looks like and some advice that we have for people when it comes to their
Please.
food spending. You and I, we still, I would say in my home, we still have strong physical memories of just a few weeks ago being in low dough Feb. Um,
Yes.
and I just, did you end up tallying your Lodo Feb results and kind of figuring out what it cost to feed the Manuel family, which is a family of four, for a month? Do you have a guesstimate at that?
God bless me. I didn't know there would be a quiz. My wife would know that number. All I remember taking away from it is what we saved. So I don't know what we spent. I'm sorry.
Back in the day, Stephen, when we started Abraham's Wallet, long before we were a podcast, we were just humble bloggers. Um, we published an article that was by far our most popular article, and it was with a local Salt Lake City mom, and the she wrote line by line a budget, and in the title of the article was "How to Feed a Family of Five on $350 a month." And that sounds like fiction. This woman was she her husband and her worked for Campus Crusade, so they were doing campus ministry work. That, I don't know if you know this, that is not often thought of as one of the more lucrative
Oh,
salaried positions that there
okay.
is. So
You don't get like stock options with your Campus Crusade package?
yeah, you don't get stock options, and if you
Okay.
did, I don't know that they would be very helpful. But
Okay.
Um, I don't know that feeding a family of five on $350 a month is possible anymore. There's been a lot of changes since 2016 when we pushed that article into the world,
Yep.
and yet, um, we're right on the heels of Lodo Feb, and my family still kind of has this physical memory of that time. And I would say, um, could you feed a family of five on $600 a month? Yes. And so I want to just get it out there that there's people listening to this, I'm sure, who would hear me say that feed a family of five on $600 a month, and they're going, well, yeah, of course you can, Mark. That's pretty, that sounds pretty reasonable. And there's people hearing this who are going, you're smoking crack, Mark.
Right.
Mr. Abraham's wallet. There's no way, unless you're just eating a bunch of garbage out of the dumpster in the back of the Tom Thumb, there's no way to do it. So I kind of want to go through what we see when we see people's food spending. Stephen, before I do that though, um, have you run into this phenomenon that I'm talking about where there seems to be like almost an identity associated with food and the type of food we buy and the amount we spend? There's something there that I'm trying to kind of unearth for our listeners.
For sure. There's a kind of elitism that goes along with buying only the best grass fed butter and only the unpasteurized Amish milk from the delivery cart that comes by. There's a little bit of, I mean, I'm sure you're going to touch on all this. It's not that, boy, isn't this apple wholesome? We know it wasn't sprayed with pesticides. That's fun. I feel like I'm in a Golden Grams commercial. That's all fine. It's the kind of smug acting like we're self-sacrificing by spending top dollar on only the best salmon, etc. Yeah, I do know that thing. And you kind of wonder, again, you have to know everything about somebody to come to any judgments, but you kind of like, well, what's your clothing budget and what are you spending on education? And there's a little something in the air that kind of smells. There's kind of a foul BO kind of smell when people kind of start trotting out we only eat this kinds of food.
I want to pull out of you one more observation that
Yeah,
you have mentioned to me, which is that there's an elitism, and we can all fall victim to that no matter how we shop. I think there could be a pride issue that comes from, oh, I only buy the Aldi, about to expire meat because I'm more financially responsible than all you jack
for
wagons. And
sure, for sure.
before I dig into any of this, I think it's important to say we are not telling you you cannot go to Whole Foods and buy all the fancy smancy foods you want. It's a key thing for me when I'm talking to a family about the way they spend. I'll tell them, I want you to be conscious of where you're putting your money, and I want you to be thoughtful. What I'm here to oppose today is not a family who makes $600,000 a year and decides to spend $2,000 a month on groceries. If as long as they've thought through that and say we have allocated a budget that works, that comes to zero, we're not spending more than we're earning, and this is where we want to put some of our extra money, great. What I'm here to oppose is the notion that it's impossible to feed a family and be in health without spending more than we can afford on groceries, because that is not true. It is a lie. And I hear it all the time. So, the other thing I noticed, though, besides just this, I'm special because of the type of food I buy, and maybe it's the same thing or maybe it's not, is I'm special because of my dietary restrictions and limitations. We like to go to a fancy restaurant here and there, and it has become de rigueur now to ask ahead of time if you make a reservation, what are your dietary restrictions? And I just think like a good chef should throw you out of the restaurant for having five different dietary restrictions. That would have happened 20 years ago, but now it's almost like a badge of honor. I have these five dietary restrictions, and I think there might be a little icky identity thing wrapped up in dietary restrictions. If you're listening to this and you're going, dude, I have celiac disease and I puke every time I eat a piece of bread, I'm not here to make you feel bad about that. I know there are real dietary restrictions for sure. However, it's a very recent thing that everyone and their dog has 7 different dietary restrictions.
It's
What do you
true.
what do you say to it, Steve?
Well, I'm gonna make a little cultural commentary before you get into the nuts and bolts of food stuff. I simply wish that I could tell our 20 something listeners who swim in this water every day and they don't know the world before this was commonplace. I just wish that I could explain to them this American cultural reality, which is we now live in an age where one of the ways that you achieve social capital is by being some kind of a put upon victim. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be dyslexia. I've seen dyslexia described in like proud terms, as if this is kind of a neat thing about me. And I don't personally play that game because I don't think that's neat. I think it is the result of sin. When sin's not present, everybody's healthy, everybody can eat everything, and our bodies work the way they're supposed to. As you said, Mark, if you are somebody who has a condition of some kind, you have my pity, and I want to fight that thing because I want you to get past it and I want you to grow into health. But again, I just want to say to the like 21-year-old, it is a new phenomenon that culturally you earn capital by having some restrictive condition and being seen as a victim in some way. Oh, I can't eat that. And so all I want to say to people on this whole topic is don't want that. Don't want it. Uh, if you are gluten free and you must be gluten free, God bless you. We do live in a fallen world and things don't work the way they're supposed to. But I want you to want free range health. So it's a sickness of our time that we like and are proud of our illnesses and our limps. So that's my only comment.
And I would just tack on, you and I would both be able to list off a handful of those things for every person in our home where we
Of
go, yeah,
course,
these things are the things we're dealing with. And so I just want people to hear we're not at all saying if you have this, then we think you're not operating the way that the king wants you to. All we're saying is um, we don't want that stuff.
that's right.
And it's a consequence of being a part of a fallen world that we have to deal with these different things. Okay. This week, what I want to do is focus in on this one area of health, which is just the food we eat. I just want to kind of go through a few things that are true. You can argue with me about these if you donate to our podcast and join our little volley community where you can record videos and we'll respond to you. Then you could come and you could argue with me about these things. But here's a few truths that I think these people who might have their sacred cow of grocery spending feeling threatened right now that they need to hear. All right. Higher food spending is not tied to better health. So I looked up a bunch of studies and healthier diets. So that would be defined as diets that have lots of fruits and vegetables and lean protein. They can cost more per calorie. I don't know if you've ever been to a Wendy's lately, but you can get a lot on their dollar menu that has a lot of calories. Spending on junk food will get you cheap calories, but these higher healthier diets are not actually substantially more expensive per nutrient. So if we actually want to shop for nourishing the things our body needs, they cost about the same whether we want to stuff them into our body in the form of Allsup stop and go burritos, where we have to eat a whole lot to get any decent nutrients, or, fresh fruits and vegetables and lean proteins and things like that. Also, um, there's a study from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey that shows that high grocery spending often includes a lot of super processed organic items, snacks, and supplements, which have zero positive contribution to health. So if you go to Whole Foods and you shop their aisles, you will see that their produce probably is more expensive than the produce at Kroger. However, it's a much bigger jump to go from your average diet staples of processed foods at the normal grocery store to the processed organic foods. And my wife, who's going to appear later in this series, always says that if your goal is health, you can pretty much achieve it at any grocery store by shopping the exterior of the store and avoiding the interior. So that's where they put the meats and produce and the she says it's the things that are ingredients instead of the things that have ingredients. You get in trouble just as much at the health food store when you start going into those processed foods, even if it says organic, all natural on the label. So, higher food spending does not automatically equal better health.
Okay. I think our tendency is to think that the more I spend on food, the better off I am. I'm going to be getting better stuff. If I mean, I go through this mental process every time I'm buying a cut of meat. I think, well, the more expensive stuff is better, right? And you just assume that. And yeah, a little research and a little touch talking to Dr. Amelia could get you shut of that assumption.
Yeah. Ultra processed foods are cheap and they are actually harmful for you. It is really sad for me to look around and see the state of young people. I am on the school board at our kids' school, and there's these wonderful kids from awesome families who care about their kids deeply. But on average, kids are way heavier in America than they were 50 years ago. I think that's no secret. We have a big problem with obesity. We also have a much, much, much higher prevalence of ultra processed foods now, and they're super convenient. I was sitting around last night going, I'm really hungry and I don't have time to make a fancy dinner. And sure enough, the air fryer was calling my name where I could just pop some chicken nuggets in. And I had ultra processed chicken that was delicious and probably had all sorts of things to make it taste better for me. That stuff's not very good for you. Big shocker. It's also really cheap. It increases the risk of obesity, heart disease, even depression is linked to consumption of ultra processed foods, but it's often inexpensive. So some spending is necessary to avoid this stuff, but it doesn't actually require luxury pricing. I feel like when I come to your house, Stephen, the pantry is generally full of not this stuff, but is that a temptation for the manuals?
Ultra processed food.
You do occasionally have an Oreo in the pantry.
We will. You know, I try to shun the Oreo company exactly, but we will. We can get the Kroger version of Oreo that hasn't been around my house in a while. I will say, my wife does a good job of looking down her nose at me if I import bad food. Um, no, I don't think so. I don't think that's a normal part of our lives.
Okay. Here's the next one, and this is related to this ultra processed food thing. If we just judge diet quality, we don't have to have the arguments about what type of diet as the prevalence of using real foods to make your diet happen versus processed foods. It is more expensive to use real foods, and the time cost is definitely there. It takes longer to make your food. However, it's not that much more expensive. So I read this study that looked at the average cost difference between a diet that relies heavily on convenience foods and one that's using more whole foods. So those things that are ingredients instead of have ingredients. What do you think the difference per day per person is if you went with a super convenient processed food diet versus making everything from quality whole food ingredients?
$14.
It's $1.50 per day. That's the difference in cost. So, you know, if we calculate that out,
Wow.
that's $225 a month for a family of 5. So it's not
Wow.
nothing, but that's what it would cost to shift from the convenience diet to an undeniably healthier diet.
I think convenience is a very helpful word to use there. My recent example was I went into a convenience store. It was probably 9:30 at night, and I was hungry. and I went in there going, okay, what can I what can I justify eating right now? And I looked around this large convenience store, aisle after aisle, item after item, and I walked out hungry and going, the answer to that is nothing. I can't justify eating anything in here. I'm gonna have to go home and try to get a boiled egg or some yogurt. And so I guess I could see how when you call it a convenience diet, there's just so much more little things that you could grab. You can grab little snacks off the counter at the bank, you know, or candies or stuff, you know, stuff that kind of keeps you going, but it all adds up as opposed to waiting and waiting. And then, oh, it's mealtime. Oh, we eat some good, like a Whole Foods here for mealtime. I guess I can see that number is smaller than I would have guessed.
Yeah. Um, okay, next truth. The Whole Foods effect is real but not helpful. So the Whole Foods effect is this idea that kind of comes from marketing that you'll get at Sprouts or Whole Foods or your premium grocery stores. And they intentionally cultivate a myth that expensive equals healthy.
Ah,
So shoppers conflate words like organic or even natural. Natural is a zinger because at least organic has some, like, you have to meet some standard to write the word organic on your food. Natural just means that we didn't. I don't even know what it means. I think you
means
can use
nothing.
that for anything. Um, but people conflate that with things like nutrient dense or healthier. And I have been warming up the barbecue for a while now, and I'm ready to throw a cow onto it because organic foods, they reduce pesticide exposure, and the research, I was like, I was plumbing ChatGPT, give me the best case for organic. And it says, you know, they might modestly improve nutrient intake by like single digit percentage over a non-organic option for, say, a head of lettuce. However, there is no ability that anyone has ever had to show a strong causal link between eating organic and having any better health outcomes on any metric.
Wow.
So, again, that is a really high bar to clear. So, for our statistics people out there, they might be going, well, yeah, causal link is almost impossible to show. That's really hard. So, I'm not saying don't eat organic. If you want to eat organic, I don't like getting a bunch of pesticide in my salad either. But the idea that a family who is, say, coming up $500 short every month on their spending, they're overspending what they earn by 500 bucks, and they're going, we just would never go to Kroger and buy the regular head of lettuce, because that would be just doing damage to our family. um, it's not really based in truth. There's, you know, I think it's a substantially lower effect than what the marketing has been able to convince people of when it comes to things like organic, natural, uh, et cetera, et cetera. You could throw in all the labels, and I just want you to remember, even if it's on a package of chicken, it's still been thought through very carefully by marketers who are trying to get you to spend more money at their store on food.
Wow. Let's I, I kind of hate this, but it is illustrative. I hate this phrase. Let's double click on that, Mark. Let's go inside there. I'd like to talk a little more about this because I'm very okay. Push explain to me when I see um organic meat, for instance, or organic or range-free eggs. Okay. Let's talk about the meat. I always think they're not shoving steroids down this cow's throat and shooting them up every week with stuff that was going to sterilize me and my children. Are you saying that if I'm eating a regular old the Kroger beef, there is, for my health's sake, there's no difference. There's virtually no difference between that and buying the organic beef.
I'm saying that so far we have not been able to prove any causal link towards two pieces of meat, one organic, one not organic. Same, if it's ground beef, same content of fat. It's an 80-20 ground beef organic and an 80-20 ground beef non organic. Right now, we have not been able to prove any causal links between health outcomes and those two choices at the store. Um, so I would just go back. I mean, a lot of people are listening to this going, wait, what? I'm spending 3x to buy the fancy meats at the grocery store. I would argue we have clients who raise cattle. You know our buddy Daniel Smith.
Yeah.
He was telling me the other day they buy a whole cow once a year, and
Right.
it's substantially cheaper than the regular old Kroger meat, but they get to go see this farm and the
Yeah.
operation, and they can see some of what you were just saying. I don't want an industrial farmed situation where a cow's up to its eyeballs in poo all day. And like I think that there's health benefits to kind of that, and it just seems like a better stewardship of God's creation
Yes.
to raise our food that way. That makes perfect sense to me. I'm trying to raise the warning flag for there's a lot of organic out there that's probably raised in almost identical industrial gross settings as the non-organic alternative, and they're just marketing it to you so that they can charge you more. I think that stuff, it's hard to make an argument that that's a better choice for your family, especially if you're in a situation where food spending is outstripping earning for your monthly budget.
Okay. I like to go to breakfast as an
Can
example
we
here.
can we zag from that real quick?
No.
Because no, okay.
No, we could do 30 minutes on this question alone about or because this organic everybody that's listening thinks that if I really care for my family, I'll take the bullet and I'll buy the organic stuff because that's what it means to be responsible and godly, etc. So I'm gonna keep going on this. Okay, are you saying that if what we eat is Lucky Charms and Pop Tarts in the morning, to go from that to a the cheapest factory produced egg is a giant step toward health, and to go from the factory egg to the range free uh, chickens that sleep on pillows of satin is a tiny step. Is that what you're saying? To go from the convenience food to real food is a huge step, and then go from factory real food to your elite real food is a tiny step. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Shifting from the processed convenience diet to the whole foods diet does not require a substantially higher budget and has massive demonstrable health effects. I'm not saying that going from the cheapest egg to a free range fancy egg is not more nutritious, because I have had chickens in my backyard, and when you crack that golden yolk open, it's certainly more delicious. And I wouldn't tell you like that's a bad thing if you said, "Hey, we've got the money and we're spending on this." Great. I'm not telling you you shouldn't do that. Again,
Yeah.
um,
What happened to your chickens?
that's totally a story for another day.
Okay.
It was a not a
All
great
right, I'll let you
ending.
move on.
But yeah, again, the person I'm speaking to is the one who's forced to either make spending trade offs with food or operate at a deficit, which will eventually lead to financial destruction for their family. And hint, when you're bankrupt, then your family's health goes into major problems. There's like higher depression and anxiety, and sleep becomes a problem, and all these things when there's financial stress in the household. That has been demonstrated with studies. So if you go bankrupt trying to feed your family at Whole Foods, they're guaranteed to have worse health outcomes than if you had just fed them a normal diet from the regular grocery store that you could afford. Um,
That is a great headline right there. Is if you have to prioritize one or the other, us becoming poor and living above our means or us having the finest, fanciest food. What you just said was you can eat the finest, fanciest food. And if you submarine your finances because of the anxiety and stress and that, and by the way, marriage problems that's going to create also, you will not have gained in the end at all. So you're trying to talk us through how to be financially responsible while still doing good nutritional things. I think that's excellent.
I asked my wife again, Dr. Parrott, I said, "What are your nutrition tips?" And she had 3 things. I already mentioned the one about eat foods that are ingredients and don't have ingredients. The second one is you can't out exercise bad nutrition. Now, I contested this a little bit because I remember when I was running the ultra marathons, I could eat like a whole Costco pizza, which I think is like 7,000 calories, and I never got fat. But the gist of the point is true. You really, while exercise and sleep and these things have massive impacts on your overall health, um, you can't just say we're just going to eat junk food all the time and we go to the gym every day so we'll be fine. So exercise, very important, very good, also doesn't make up for nutritional problems. And the third one, she said, I don't know that we have time to, as you say, Stephen, double click on this one,
Yeah,
but
that's what I like to say.
it's a fantastic point. She said, if you're a parent and your children are overweight, this is your responsibility, full stop. Whether it's that processed food thing, there's always snacks and junk available. Again, we go back to the first point I said, those foods have a lot of calories and almost no nutrition.
Can I double down on what the good doctor said here?
Yeah, yeah. Are you going to talk
I
about
I
obesity in children or something?
Yes, I
Okay.
love Dr. Amelia's point here. The physical condition of your child is nobody's responsibility but yours. And sometimes it's hard to put your finger on, well, how emotionally healthy are they? I don't know, they seem like you're doing okay. My daughter went through a semester of like a lot of relationship problems at school, and she was kind of sad about it. And I'm trying to discern, she's not teetering on depression, is she? She's just working through a hard thing, and it takes a while. All of that kind of, you have to do all of this discerning along the way with so much of your child's life, not physically. It's easily measurable with the eyeballs. And if they are pudgy, if they can't exercise, if they're slothful, uh, it's on you. You need to change. I'm lovingly. I put my hands on your face, on your cheeks, like you're my dear child, and I tell you, you've got to change the culture of your home. And it's on you, and you can do it. And God made you to take responsibility for these kids. And you are not going to like hold your breath and go like, I hope they make it past all my bad habits. And then when they get out in the world, they'll grow up and start creating good habits. No, the foundation that you're laying for them right now regarding diet and exercise, is it a pain? Is it a joy? Is it part of our family's culture? Is it something that those other people out there do? They take care of their bodies. Bro, we take care of our bodies. It's part of our job. And if that's not part of the culture of your home, I would like to extend a formal invitation to you that you repent and say, we're going to get together as a family and we're going to apologize to God for the way that we haven't taken care of our bodies, and we're going to start doing something about it. So we didn't start this episode meaning for me to say that, but when Amelia mentions children, it's a big deal. It really matters. So I got to say that.
We're going to do a whole episode on what does physical activity look like as a part of this series, because it's such a there's such a current in American culture that it could sit you on the couch and you could have no physical activity in your home. That would be one strand of the river that will just naturally keep you there. But there's another one that's like, give us your child and we will turn your entire family's rhythms into youth sports and blah, blah, blah. And we want you to actually be thoughtful about how you address physical activity in your kids. So stay tuned for that piece. I think the what I wanted to wrap up with is just to give you a side by side. What would a $3,000 a month grocery budget look like versus a $1,500 a month budget? And I'm telling you that you don't have to do any of these things. Again, I'm not here to tell you what you should spend on groceries. Some of you hear $1,500 a month and think I'm off my rocker. That's so much money. Um, Other people think that's completely impossible. But I said, okay, what would it look like between the two? So let's look at protein. $3,000 a month protein budget is $800 that you're spending on premium meat, seafood, deli cuts, organic eggs, etc. That can easily be cut in half by going with more budget cuts. I did chicken thighs last night on the smoker, dirt cheap, delicious. We had kind of Nashville flavored chicken sandwiches. It was not expensive. We had four extra people at the dinner table that aren't in our family, and it was also totally healthy and good. I actually think they were even organic, and they were still running me about $2.99 a pound. So ground beef and turkey, eggs. Uh, get yourself some chickens if the egg crisis has weighed on your budget. Even things like beans can be high protein. Canned fish, canned chicken. Make yourself some enchiladas with some canned meat and thank me later. Produce wise, it's easy to spend $800 on all organic, out of season, fresh produce, pre cut options. I know our little grocery store has twice as expensive for just the exact same thing, but chopped up for you. Just get your knife out and do that yourself. A more reasonable amount, I would say, would be thinking about $350 a month on in season produce. You might use frozen veggies. Frozen veggies are not actually much cheaper. The benefit is you tend to not waste as much either. You just use what you need and then you keep the rest. Um, Basic fruit, again, shopping in season will save you a ton of money there. Packaged foods and snacks, kind of the super pricey option goes to $500. Could be used on bars, crackers, organic snacks, quote health treats. Versus $150, you can get the basics: popcorn, nuts, simple ingredients for homemade snacks. That's pretty easy to do on a budget. When we look at dairy and alternatives, Stephen mentioned if you're having Amish John deliver your organic, unpasteurized milk, you can easily spend $400 a month on milk, name brand yogurts, alternative milks. Those things are generally not good for you, but all the different milks they have now. Cheese varieties. I do love a fancy cheese, so I don't judge you here, but it is expensive. Versus maybe $200 on regular milk, store brand yogurt. You can get a big old Costco Greek yogurt that will give you more protein than you could possibly process in one sitting for almost no money. Um, Again, the block cheese is much, much less expensive for the exact same cheese as the one that they've sliced into sandwich slices. So get yourself a little cheese slicer and save yourself some money. Beverages, $250 a month on kombucha, sparkling water, bottled smoothies, cold brew, versus $50 on just coffee, tea, and tap water. You don't really need all the fancy drinks, and they're generally not good for you. And then the last one that might be the most important in this whole list is most people throw out so much food. I am guilty of this. We have thrown out so much food in the past. Even last week, I said to my wife, I said, we're not buying these delicious clementines from Costco anymore because we always love and enjoy the first half of the bag and we don't get through the whole bag before they turn rotten. So let's buy those at our regular grocery store where, yes, on a per unit basis, they are more expensive, but we're not going to throw half of them away. So we end up saving money. So buying in bulk when you don't need bulk can actually lead to a lot of waste. And so really paying attention to what you're wasting can cut your budget. Again, my goal in laying that out for you is not to tell you this is what you should spend per category. You might say, hey, we're spending $1,200 a month on protein. That's fine. I don't have a moral judgment on that. What I want you to know is you can feed a large family for far less than you think. I promise that that's true. The big paradigm shift might be it doesn't have to have a negative health impact whatsoever on your family. So that's our episode this week. Like Steven said, we're going to be kind of plumbing into a few different categories when it comes to physical capital. And until we get there, I would just encourage you, keep running your home and your dough like a biblical boss, and go get after fullness and health when it comes to your physical capital for both you and your family. We'll see you next week on the Abraham's Wallet podcast.